Hey there, listeners. Well, this interview that I did with a guy called Steve Hong, who's the Vice President of Global Sales and Marketing at an organization called Lorex. Now, Steve, the conversation we had was in relation to what he's been doing, and he and his team have won all sorts of accolades over the years. But you know what? Steve talked about coaching as a leader. And, you know, a lot of leaders think about they need to be a coach. Well, actually, no, you just need to use the coaching approach as a leader. But it's about when a leader does that, how people start to flourish. And so we talked about that. But there was a question that I've got for you right now, which is something that you need to listen to the episode to understand what it means. But the question is, are you a shepherd? And Steve talked about that kind of concept. And so have a really good listen to it as well, because it's an actual really, really cool and very impactful kind of theme that he actually shared there. All right, listeners, it's time for you to get into the episode and listen to the interview. So enjoy.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas.
Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Leadership is Changing podcast. Great to have you here with us. I've got an awesome guest with me today. His name is Steve Hong. And Steve, a massive welcome to you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, Steve, whereabouts are you in the world today?
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Toronto, Canada. Great place, right? So we're both from the Commonwealth. In other words, you are in Canada and myself in New Zealand. And so just using technology is awesome to be able to be talking to each other today. So tell us a little bit more about Steve. What's your background?
Yeah, my background is originally from South Korea, and I immigrated to Canada from Korea when I was at 11. And like many Korean immigrants, my parents owned a grocery store, and I grew up being a cashier for my teenage years. And that's where I began to actually learn how to work and began understanding the importance of work ethic. And it's funny because as I got onto this podcast, I started reminiscing of my past. And my father constantly reminded me that when I step behind the cash register, I got to put all my childishness behind and I have to be a completely different person. And at that time, I actually didn't know what that meant, but I had to obey him for him being my father. And now looking back, I fully appreciate what he had to teach me at that time.
So what did he actually mean by being a different person?
Yeah, obviously I was no different than the average immature teenager, but now that I am in front of the cash register, I'm dealing with a customer. I'm no longer dealing with other kids. So I have to put on my professional face and I have to be attentive to the money that I'm taking and any questions that I'm asked. I have to respond in a very professional way was basically what he was referring to.
Yeah, very good, very good. Now, Steve, you are the Vice President for Global Sales and Marketing at an organization called Lorex. What does Lorex do? And then also tell us a little bit more about the organization and what it does, because I know the listeners will be interested to hear about Lorex.
All right. Well, Lorex is a leading brand out of Canada, North America, very few remaining Canadian brand who is leading the smart security space. So we produce both professional grade wired security camera all the way down to Wi-Fi, DIY, indoor, outdoor cameras and doorbells and etc. And we're protecting what matters most to our customers.
Yeah, their property themselves, very important stuff here.
Absolutely.
Excellent. My next question for you here, Steve, is how did you get into leadership? Because you are a vice president today, but how did you get into leadership and what has been your sort of journey in relation to leadership?
Great question. So for me, I was always a good individual contributor in my past, in my early career. And as I was excelling in my early individual contribution, obviously my scope of work expanded. And as my scope of work expanded, that also came with some of the team members that I had to manage. And with that, I had the experience of managing a team where, individuals that I had to coach. And I found a true joy in seeing them flourish by the guidance that I've started providing. And it was far greater than the joy that I found in the individual achievement and success that I've seen. And Since then, I've continued on the people management and leadership capacity, and I enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah, good. Now, one thing I do want to ask you was your role expanded. Did they
Mhm.
develop you, whatever organization it was, did they develop you into the leadership role, going from individual contributor into a leader role? And so how did you actually get that role? Did it just happen? What happened there? And did they actually develop you?
So there was a little bit of a development, and I say that they provided me with a guidance in terms of what was expected of me from my roles and responsibility standpoint. But obviously, understanding that different individuals have a different leadership styles, they left it to myself. So it wasn't really rigid in terms of how to develop my leadership style. So there was a lot of learnings that I had to learn on the way to where I am today. Yes.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Now, the reason I'm asking that question is that there'll be people who are listening to this. The audience is from C-suite right through to frontline leaders, even those who are thinking about becoming leaders in the future as well. It's amazing the vast audience that we have here listening to this podcast. One question probably going through their minds is, if I'm thinking about being a leader, or if I'm a leader today and I want to go to another level, what is
Mhm.
one or two things you think people should do to develop themselves?
For me, I think one of the things that really helped me to get to the leadership position and be successful in it was to try to understand the strengths and the weaknesses of the team members that I manage, right? Because I've tried multiple times trying to teach somebody that it's not their strong suit, but trying to fix that didn't really work out very well. But what really did work out was when I took the time to understand their strength and weakness and assigning the work that they would excel in with based on their strength have always yielded a very positive results. So obviously, while I try to help develop my team members, this is not a school. So output is just as equally important. So I think that's what one of the things that I took away and that have become successful. So learning about your team member is critically important.
Interesting you say that, because I think what a lot of leaders tend to do is they focus on those weaknesses. And the thing is, if you focus on the strengths and people start to excel in what they do really well, those other things will probably tend to follow and grow as well.
I completely agree. And I think I'm always focused on ROI, right? So every time that I spend with the team members, I would focus on their strengths so that they will maximize the output.
ROI tends to be a return on investment, but is it return on the individual?
Oh, that's a good one. I actually thought of return on investment, but a new term you're coining.
Yeah, awesome, eh? Maybe we should patent this. This is very good.
Yes, let's do it.
Role of the individual, the return on the individual, but I think it's both of how we can actually get investment back. And what we talk about here, listeners, is not that someone's sitting there going, maybe there are some people sitting there going, oh, how much are we getting back on this person? But it's about the investment actually in them. It's actually the investment in the whole organization. It's about the results that we're getting. And I love what you said before. This is not a school. This is an organization, a business where we actually need to get results too. And I like what you say there.
Thank you.
All right. So, Steve, the other thing here is, I don't know about you. For me, I have some leaders who are really been my favorites. So, who's been your favorite leader and why?
Mhm. So prior to working at Lorex, I spent a decade at Samsung Electronics, and you probably heard of them. And the first gig at Samsung was corporate strategy and planning manager. So that was probably the only span of time that where I didn't spend my time as a sales and marketing leader. And during that time, I was able to learn about Samsung and history and etc. And the leader of Samsung, the second chairman, namely Kun-hee Lee, was have become a key figure that inspired me as a leader. And for him, his main thing was about transformational leadership, people first leadership, and risk taking. So these were some of the key attributes that helped me to shape my future, my leadership style.
And when you, those three really interesting things. So, can you repeat those again? So, transformational leadership,
Yeah,
first,
yeah, transformational and people first and risk taking.
and risk taking. How important is risk taking?
Risk taking is very important, especially this time and age. Obviously, even for Lorex, there has been numerous occasions where we had to take a risk in our business in order to retain our business, and especially with the amount of new entrants and competition that is sprouting left, right, and center. If we continue our course without taking any risks, we will not be around for very much longer.
Yeah. And it's risk taking is one thing. I remember in my
Mhm.
career in EDS days, IT company and based in the US, but it's global, and then got bought out by HP later on. I remember us talking about taking risks, and risks is very important. As you said, if we don't take risks, we're not going to be here for much longer. But the thing was, it wasn't just risky; it always is risky. But the other thing component was it was calculated risk.
Correct.
So we would make sure we understand numbers or what we're doing and things like that, and that's really important. I think so. You were Samsung before Lorex. So your career wise, have you always been in electronics?
Prior to Samsung, I actually worked at a Korean consulate commercial section. So basically, there, what I did was I helped many mid to small size companies out of Korea export and find new customers and launch in North American market. And it was funded by a government. It's a unique program. And I was fortunate to have that opportunity. And there, obviously, I was one man show doing marketing, sales, market research, all the way to post sales support. And there I was able to learn the entirety of the business. And at the same time, managing anytime I would manage anywhere between 10 to 12 companies, different brands and different industries and so forth. It also helped me to gain confidence in a way that, if there's a product, I can find a buyer and I can sell.
Yeah.
And that also helped me to establish career in sales and marketing.
Yeah, I was going to say it would actually be a great foundation for what you're doing nowadays. Yeah. Actually, do you miss the work that you did in the Korean console?
I do. It was quite interesting, fun, but obviously had its own challenges. And I love what I do right now at Lorex. It's such a great brand and respect around the world. And there's still a lot more to do to become like Samsung. It's kind of challenging.
Yeah, sure. Okay, very good. Now, the next question here for you is in relation to the show and its title, right? The leadership is changing. That is a title, but it's also a statement. When I say that, what does it mean for Steve?
For me, I think the change is so critical, and I think it relates back to risk taking and etc. As you mentioned, the title of the show of the podcast and the changing in the leadership is so critically important, especially in this fast-paced landscape. And that leaders must provide clear direction and guidance to their team because ultimately, I believe a leadership role is almost like a shepherd. And our role is to provide a vision and then provide a guide in terms of how to get to and achieve that vision, and then stay alongside side by side in order to ensure that they are being shepherded on a daily basis into that right direction. But when I say shepherd, but I also need to ensure that I am earning their trust.
Yeah, definitely. I like the analogy of about the shepherd as well, because I'm thinking here of the gentleman from New Zealand, Sir Edmund Hillary, who went to Everest and
Yeah.
actually had the shepherds or the guides beside him and others as they're going I'm going to say up the hill, but actually it's a mountain. It's very tall. But the great thing there is that I like what you say. It's about the vision and the guide and going side by side. But a lot of the foundation or the underlying foundation of it is trust.
Mhm.
Trust is a huge word. It's only TRUST, only 5 letters. It's a big word. What have you noticed around trust? How is that important for an organization to make sure they've got a strong foundation of trust?
So for me personally, and trust goes both ways. And for me, when I hire somebody, that characteristics obviously I won't know fully until I start working with that person. But the attributes that can help indicate how trustworthy this person will be is very critically important for me. Vice versa, when I commit on something, and then I would do my utmost best to ensure that my promise is always kept and that I am transparent with whether it's good or bad so that we are in this together mindset. It's not top down approach, but it is more of a collaborative approach of leadership is something that I try to aspire to. And at the same time, my old boss at Samsung has one of the local CEO that I reported up to. He was quite a philosopher, and he focused on 5-letter proverb from Chinese proverb. And basically, the 5 words first is the knowing. I need to know what I'm tasking, and then acting. So I need to be able to actually do this job myself. And then using, meaning knowing this knowledge, I'm able to come up with strategies. And then fourth is teaching. I need to know enough so that I can teach somebody and instruct them in a manner that they need to perform. And then lastly, evaluating and being able to critically judge how effective and appropriate their knowledge and applications were. So these 5 characters have always stuck with me from my early days from Samsung. So if I'm asking somebody to do something, I need to know that I know what I'm asking them to do. Right? And that also helped me to build that trust. Right. And leader isn't somebody that who just comes up with an idea and just blindly tasks your team to do something.
Yeah, great. I like the analogy around that: knowing, acting, using,
Mhm.
teaching, and
Mhm.
evaluating.
Yes.
5 great steps there, listeners, for you to think about as a leader to help build trust, but also help people grow in the organization. Why? Because we're in this together. That's a great way to think about it as well. Steve, thank you for sharing all that. That's really good. Now, you and I are living in the world, and you talked about it before about being a fast paced, ever
Mhm.
changing world. We see technology is driving it. You're in the industry of technology. A lot of that is driving the fast paced, changing world. Data, social, business, everything we're doing seems to be getting a lot faster for some reason. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but maybe, but it seems to be getting a lot faster. How does a leader make sure that they are successful in a fast paced, ever changing world? What are your thoughts?
Mhm. I say continued communication with your team. And we're only one person, and there's only so much that we can consume from media and so forth. But at the same time, just getting the fresh ideas from your team members that are slightly younger, not too far from it. But I think that's one way for me to stay connected and stay in adapted to the fast changing environment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the thing here would be part of the knowing of the 5 things you said before is growing and learning a lot. What I find, Steve, is a lot of leaders think they need to know it all. They think they need to have the answers, and they don't. And
Mm-hmm.
so the important thing here is surrounding yourself with some really good people, because many minds, many brains are a lot better than just one. And they can come up with
Absolutely.
different ideas as well. Yeah. And so I think across all generations in an organization, you can probably pick up different ideas as well, which is a smart leader and actually putting it in place.
Yes.
Mm. Now, you and I have been talking about leadership through the lens of a leader. Change lens now and think about it as from an employee's perspective, because
Mhm.
even though you're a vice president, you're still an employee as well of a large corporate, right? And so
Yeah.
we've both been in that situation. Today,
Mhm.
employees' expectations of leaders.
I do think it has that the relationship and the expectations from the leadership, at least from my younger days or earlier days in my career, has been that, as you mentioned, that they are to be all knowing and that all fully guiding. But I think that time has changed and the transparent leadership. And it's almost like when I think back when I was younger, looking at my parents, that oh, my parents knows everything and they can't make a mistake. But as I grow up, I realize they are people and they can make mistakes and they don't know it all, right? And that the transparency from the leadership is actually far more appreciated with the for me. And I think that's the type of appreciation that we see from the team and the employees of a company.
Yeah, so transparency is a big thing. And actually, as I do these interviews, in
Mm,
fact, Steve, what I've done is because I've gone nearly 300 interviews with leaders, 300 leaders around the world,
mhm,
what I've noticed is that there tends to be about 30 sort of similar themes coming up. One of them is
mhm,
around transparency, as you just talked
mhm,
about. And what I've gone and done is I've created an executive PDF guide, as I call it, and I've selected 10 of the themes. And then also
mhm,
underneath those is about 42 strategic insights. But transparency is a very important topic for a lot of people to think about. But I think there has to be a balance of you being transparent versus being too transparent,
mhm,
oversharing maybe at times. What
mhm.
are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. Obviously, you have to be wise in terms of how you share the same information, right? Obviously, while we don't hide any information, but different levels and different jobs would require different purview to different type of information or amount of information that is currently being obviously made available to them, right? Again, while keeping it completely transparent, but the amount of information that is being shared should vary depending on the individuals.
Yeah, cool. What happens if the employees have got questions about something, but you don't actually have all the information right now? How transparent can you be in relation to that?
my leadership style would be to tell them that if I don't have all the answers, that I will commit to getting back with the right information. And so I would keep my commitment with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's good, and that's a good way of doing it. The key is to make sure we do go back, right? Otherwise,
Exactly. Absolutely.
yeah, otherwise that
Keeping my
trust.
commitment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Your commitment. Yeah, definitely. That's good. Alrighty. I'm going to ask you to get your crystal ball out here. Actually, before we go there, actually, I'm looking at you in your resume, your profile, and I noticed that you and your team have earned numerous accolades over the years, including
Mhm.
Global Employee of the Year, a
Mhm.
Global Best Practices President's Award, Best Team Award, America's Top Online Store by Newsweek for 5 years straight, and different other organizations you've been in. And how do you get all these accolades? What are you doing?
It's not me.
It's not me.
It is always my team. And at the end of the day, I thank God for giving me the team and all of the mentors and the team members that have shaped to be the leader that I am today, as well as the team members that have graciously followed my lead and developed in with one mind and with a trust, tirelessly working to deliver what we set out to deliver with a vision, a single vision, and that we were able to make that vision come alive several occasions. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, that's awesome. Congrats on all these different accolades. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, very good. The last question I have is that getting your crystal ball out now, I'm thinking about the future. If you were to think about the future around leadership, where do you see leadership being in 5 years?
So the leadership in 5 years, if I have to bring out my crystal ball, I think the leadership's role is going to expand in order to how to guide the team to accept and harness the evolution of technology, specifically in the AI form. Because everywhere we see, and with how AI has impacted our businesses from small to large, I think that's one aspect that the leadership has to continue to think and evolve to embrace that change.
To embrace it and to keep up with it, I suppose, with the pace of how
Right.
much that's changing too.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Because that's very good because I think, yeah, AI is a big thing. Now, from a leadership perspective, for a leader who's listening to this, do they really need to worry about AI or do they just, what are your thoughts? Do they
Uh,
have to get really dive deep into it? What should they do?
I think if they're not in tuned with AI or they're not up to date with AI development, then they should be scared and they should be worried.
Yeah.
And I think this is a transformational time, as we quickly talked about earlier. And this is the time that the leadership must take risks, calculated risks in terms of how to embrace and apply AI technology into our operations and sales and marketing and etc. Because I do truly believe that it is going to shape how we operate in all aspects of our businesses.
So, what Steve's saying here, listeners, is if you're not getting involved with it, you should be afraid, but you shouldn't be afraid of actually getting involved in it because I think the important thing here is us to learn from it. It's a bit like when the internet came out, oh, it's not going to work. When we went from cassette tapes to CDs, oh, it won't last very long. DVDs, oh, it won't last long. But what we've noticed is they have, and they've gone on in life, and we've adapted to it. For some people, they did, and some of them they don't. And I think, Steve, what I say in this podcast is that many leaders go from email to email, meeting to meeting, and many of them are not changing quick enough, which means they run the risk of becoming irrelevant and being left behind. And we've seen
Mhm,
many times organizations who have been left behind. Even during
mhm,
COVID times, they didn't adapt, they didn't trust what was going on, or there wasn't enough trust within the organization for them to adapt and move, and they have
mhm.
been left behind, which is a shame. So, yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
very important for them to look at AI and go from there.
right.
Yeah. All right, Steve, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I can't believe how fast this has gone, this conversation. If people wanted to get hold of you, where should they go?
Yes, if they wanted to get a hold of us or hold of me or learn more about Lorex, they can browse our wide range of security solutions on our Lorex.com website or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok or Twitter. Or if you want to get in touch with us through an email, you can reach us at sales@lorex.com.
There you go. Steve, once again, it's a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Excellent. There you go, listeners. What a great interview that was. Coaching as a leader is very important. That's how people will flourish within your organization. But also understand the strengths and weaknesses of your team to actually help them and focus on the strength. Is it the return on investment? Or is it a return on the individual? Interesting sort of discussion there. But my question to you is this. Are you a shepherd? Are you a leader that's going to help guide people and walk beside them to help them get them to where they need to get to by building trust and so forth? Because you see, we are in this together. Hey, it's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.